In the entire Bible, every person who bore fruit that outlasted their lifetime first went through a season where something they valued was cut away. Not some of them, every single one. And here is the principle that changes how you read your current loss. God does not prune dead branches. He prunes branches that are already bearing fruit. The cutting the loss, the removal, the silence is not evidence that you are finished. It is evidence that you are already producing something worth investing in. A gardener who prunes isn't punishing the vine. He is making a calculated decision that the vine can handle more. The cut is not rejection. It is selection. If God is removing something from your life right now, the question is not whether He has abandoned you. The question is what He is preparing you to carry. But before we go into how the process works, I need you to see what happens when someone refuses it. Lot's wife. She was being led out of Sodom, out of everything that needed to be removed. God was actively pruning a life that had grown attached to the wrong soil. She looked back, not in curiosity, in grief for what was being cut away. And she became a pillar of salt frozen at the point of her refusal. The pruning that was meant to free her became the thing that ended her. God wasn't withholding from her. She was withholding from God. The first thing pruning does is this. It removes what drains you, not what defines you. In viticulture, the actual science of growing vines, a branch that looks completely healthy can still be a liability, full of leaves, full of growth, consuming water and nutrients. But if it isn't bearing fruit, it is stealing from the branches that are. It looks productive, it isn't. God cuts it. Naomi lost her husband and both of her sons. Everything she had built her identity around was removed. She was so defined by the loss that she changed her own name. She asked people to call her Mara, which means bitter. What she couldn't see was that what remained after the cutting, her daughter-in-law Ruth, was the branch God had been cultivating the entire time. That relationship became the lineage of David. The pruning looked like total loss. It was total redirection. What in your life looks healthy from the outside, but has stopped producing anything real? The second thing, the cut always happens closest to what you love. The pruner's shears don't cut at the dead end of a branch. They cut at the joint, the point of connection. The removal happens at the point of attachment. Abraham and Ishmael. God didn't ask Abraham to release a stranger or an enemy. He asked him to release his son, the first one. The one he had waited decades for, raised, loved. The pruning happened at the closest possible point, and the very act of releasing what he held most tightly made room for Isaac, the child of promise, the one who carried the covenant forward. The thing being removed wasn't peripheral to Abraham's life. It was central. That is how the pruner works. He cuts where the attachment is strongest, because that is where the drain is greatest. What is being removed from your life right now that is close, not something already dying, but something you still love? The third thing, a pruned branch looks worse before it looks better. This is what nobody explains. A vine immediately after pruning looks damaged, diminished, harmed. The evidence of good pruning is completely delayed. Elijah at the brook Cherith. God sent him there. Clean water, provision, ravens bringing bread every day. And then the brook dried up. The provision stopped. Elijah had done nothing wrong. The cutting happened not because he failed, but because God had something else. The dried brook wasn't punishment, it was redirection. Because when the water stopped, Elijah moved to Zarephath, where the widow was waiting, where the oil didn't run out, where he was being shaped for Carmel. The brook had to dry before the next thing could begin. What has dried up in your life recently? And is it possible the drying is not an ending, but a redirect? The fourth thing, the branch doesn't choose when it gets cut. The vine does not decide when the pruner arrives. The gardener decides. And sometimes the cut comes before you are even old enough to understand what is happening. Mephibosheth was 5 years old when his nurse dropped him fleeing the palace, both legs broken. He spent the years that followed in Lodabar, a place whose name means no pasture, a place of nothing. He didn't choose that fall. He didn't choose that loss. And he spent years in obscurity, lame, forgotten, in a barren place. Then David sent for him, not because of anything Mephibosheth had done, but because of a covenant David had made with Jonathan. The pruning that happened to him in childhood was the very thing that positioned him for a restoration he could never have designed himself. Is there a loss in your past, something you didn't choose, that God may have been using to position you for something you couldn't have reached any other way? Now, here is the moment most people quit. It is not when the cut happens. It is when the cut has happened and the new growth has not appeared yet. John 15:2 says the Father prunes every branch that already bears fruit so that it will bear more, but there is a gap between that pruning and the more fruit. And in that gap, the branch looks exactly like a branch that has been destroyed. Same wound, same bareness, same silence. You cannot tell from the outside whether a branch has been pruned or killed. Only time reveals which one it is. You are probably in that gap right now. The cut has happened. The new growth hasn't come. Everything around you is saying it's over. It is not over. A pruned branch and a dead branch look identical in the gap. Only one of them is about to bear fruit. And God already knows which one you are. Before I close, I need to tell you something. The fruit that comes after pruning may not look like what you imagined. The widow at Zarephath wasn't restored to wealth. She was given exactly enough, day by day, for as long as the drought lasted. That was the fruit. Not abundance, sufficiency. Naomi didn't get her sons back. She got Ruth. And Ruth became the great-grandmother of David. The fruit of your pruning may not be a restoration of what was cut. It may be something entirely new, something you could not have received while the old branch was still consuming everything. The morning after Abraham sent Ishmael away, he did not know that the very next chapter of his life would carry everything he had ever been promised. He sat in the grief of the cut. The tent was quieter. The absence was real. He did not know what day he was on. He didn't know the pruning was finished and the fruit was already forming. He just sat in the morning after the loss. You may be in that morning right now. The cut has happened. The tent is quiet. You don't know what day you're on. Stay rooted. The fruit is already forming.